record. So basically, with what you're saying, the goal is to work out, well, like the first goal is to work out the language that we're using. You know, how do I use the language to increase my self-belief and how I view myself? So a big thing for me is was understanding the language that I held because like you mentioned, you wanna feel it from within, and feelings are emotions. So like you consciously know everything that you've been through. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like so you've consciously done the work to where you know this is how I want to feel. Like these people are not good for me in my life. Like so you're not repeating cycles, so consciously you've broken it. So it's about learning how to talk to and reprogram your subconscious because your subconscious is how you feel things. So a practice that I got put onto after I had my first mental breakdown um, was a pretty fun time. But basically, it's rooted out of Psych K, psychology, kinestology. So basically, psychology kinestology is the understanding of movement and the activation of the hemispheres of the brain. So the simplest thing is all you have to do is cross hemispheres because my right hand is controlled by my left hemisphere. My left hand's controlled by my right hemisphere. So when I cross hemispheres, all of that conscious language that I use is being directly implanted into my subconscious mind. And like you've found with the conscious experience, it's about building that discipline or building those habits of, I don't seek validation out of these people, or I don't, want to be in these environments. So every time that you're doing that and enacting that, you're building a stronger synaptic pathway to that behavior. So that's what we're trying to replicate in the subconscious. So when you say, like, for example, I want to feel good about who I am, all we do is cross our hemispheres and then we just repeat, like, I feel good about who I am. I feel good about who I am. I feel good about who I am. And we just keep repeating it until there's an emotional shift. So until we feel an emotional sensation, because that emotional sensation is the subconscious mind basically confirming or locking in the new program. So that's all we're doing is we're just artificially strengthening the synaptic pathway that says, I feel good about who I am. Do you know what I mean? So that whenever
yeah,
you think about who you are, that's the first language pattern or the first narrative that runs because it's the most predominantly used. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's sort of like working out, like when, for example, I don't feel good about myself, okay, we got to work out, well, why is that? What is the meaning that I'm putting towards that? In terms of, for example, am I saying like I'm not good enough? And then I'm putting meanings of, not being fast enough, not being pretty enough, not being, you know what I mean? Like we put all these different meanings to the the language pattern or the narrative that we create. So it's in understanding them and changing them. So when I say to myself, I feel good about who I am, why do I feel good about who I am? So it's like finding those aspects of you that you want to amplify. Like you mentioned before, I'm strong, I'm people's rock, like I'm a stable person. So it's about amplifying them within yourself so that when you're saying, I feel good about myself, it's because I am strong. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And then the last step is now associating memories to it. So for example, when you're saying like the meaning is I feel strong, you have to have all those moments where you showed inner strength and courage and you took the action. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the memories are
Yeah.
just so traumatic. They're just so
Yeah, yeah.
traumatic that,
Yeah, yeah.
I've really just
So it's creating
been
new
wanting to let him
memories.
go.
Yeah, so it's creating new memories. Because right now, when you think about it, you're being directed to those memories. Do you know what I mean? So we're trying to consciously reprogram in new memory associations to meanings.
Right.
So it's sort of like we have to work through on deleting all the old memories and replacing them with new memories. And the easiest way to understand this is just like you've already demonstrated, all it is to overcome the trauma is new action moving forward. Like, for example, when I feel the trauma of burning my hand on a hot plate, if I decide not to put my hand on a hot plate, I don't need to hold on to the memory of the pain. Do you know what I mean? Because I know why I'm not going to put my hand on the hot plate. But when I don't have any actions or new direction in behavior moving forward, I always have to hold on to the past because it's the past pain that allows me to identify the sort of the future potential for pain. Do you know what I mean? So if someone cheats on me, I have to be always observant of their behavior so that I can identify if they're doing something wrong. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I
Mm,
can create a new sort of path moving forward where if someone cheats on me, I end the relationship and I'm upfront and open in all future relationships saying, if you cheat on me, I end the relationship and move on. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to worry about
mm,
other people's behavior because as soon as that negative behavior is presented to me, I've got directive and action to take. Do you know what I mean? But it's also in understanding trauma. So understanding our trauma is based out of our emotional response to environments or to situations that we go through. And our emotions are in our subconscious mind, so they don't hold any understanding of logic and reason. So things that are highly traumatic can be from extreme cases or they can be from mild cases. So, like, for example, my best friend, not liking me or a very, very close relationship where that person just decides they don't like me, they haven't really done anything to me, but I can see it as being highly traumatic because of the emotion associated to the relationship. Do you know what I mean? So
mm.
what that means is our concept of trauma isn't based in linear scale. We create and determine the amount of trauma that we feel from any emotion or experience that we've been through. So, like one way that I worked on dealing with this, because I had a lot of trauma around violence when I was growing up. So, like, from an early age, I learned that in all fights, you have to be willing and prepared to fight to the death. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, like, I
yeah,
always had that trauma with me of these experiences because it came from many experiences between the ages of 8 and 14 where I would be walking around town or around the city and I would have random 40-year-old, 50-year-old dudes stop and threaten to kill me. Do you know what I mean? So like it
yeah.
taught me that you always have to be prepared. So like I created these rules out of seeing these situations as highly traumatic because I didn't want to go through them. But in realistic terms, nothing really happened. It was the perceived threat of violence that I created the trauma around. Do you know what I mean? So it's not to say that like all trauma is equal, but it's to say that like I can choose to expand that trauma and make it worse and worse and worse, or I can choose to make it less. So, like for example, to put it in perspective, when I was in high school, my brother was 2 years older than me. So his friends, as a sort of a process of conditioning and toughening up, used to try and beat me up every day. Do you know what I mean? Like not punch me in the face, but punch me in the arm, knee me or kick me. Do you know what I mean? I didn't see that as being bullying because what they were trying to do was they were trying to gain like a response from me. Whereas I saw it as it was a game of dominance or a show of dominance. So what that meant is even though there was physical trauma there, I didn't identify it as trauma. I sort of identified it as someone trying to sort of over dominate me. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like I created more meaning for the trauma when I was younger because I created the belief or the meaning that it was life threatening. Whereas the bullying, I didn't see it as being life threatening or anything like that. So I created less trauma, even though there was more physical trauma. So it's sort of like in understanding that we determine the amount of trauma that we feel from memories or experiences that we've gone through. So it's sort of like, it's not to say like that we want to go through and experience that. So we're not sweeping it under the rug and saying it doesn't exist. But we're saying, like, for example, even in the worst case, like, for example, I recently walked across country and and like this is to put in perspective like pain and things like that. So like I went through the trauma of like severely um like cramping both of my calves while being out in the middle of nowhere. So like I didn't have a choice. Do you know what I mean? Like to give in to that sort of pity party of this is something bad that's happening to me. All I had to do was deal with this situation and move forward. So like pain is the exact same. When we think about trauma, we're associating it to pain. It's a painful memory, it's a painful time. But pain isn't specifically negative or it isn't specifically positive. So, for example, what I found was even if my calves cramp, if I just keep drinking water and keep walking, at a certain point in time, the pain goes away. Like I don't have to be subservient to the pain and try and coddle myself about it. It's sort of like I can choose to see something as being highly painful and detrimental to me, or I can choose to see something as being like nothing, like it's a light inconvenience. Do you know what I mean? It's not that we want to sort of sweep it under the rug where we're not addressing the situation or addressing the behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not giving other people free passes if they slap us in the face. We're just realizing that if someone slaps me in the face, like it doesn't really hurt that much. Do you know what I mean? I can make it out to hurt a lot more than it needs to, but it doesn't really need to hurt that much. So when we understand this, this is what we're trying to do with like reprogramming those subconscious thoughts or those subconscious emotions that we're feeling is we're determining that if I'm being triggered into a negative emotion, like it doesn't have to be that bad. So an important thing for me personally in realizing emotions and dealing with the emotions was that when I try to minimize the pain I'm feeling from my emotions, I amplify my susceptibility to the experience of that pain. So when I avoid pain, the smallest amount of pain feels a lot more. So what I found personally, with like my own personal development in terms of dealing with and working through my emotional trauma and the pain that was associated with it was that it's about leaning into the emotions, not avoiding the emotions. When I repress the emotions, they become harder to control because I'm not looking at them, I'm not aware of them, I don't understand them. Do you know what I mean? When
I
when I
do.
lean into them, what happens is now I become a part of them. So it's about doing it in a safe space. And I do like the same process because you're just activating the subconscious and the conscious. So when the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are activated simultaneously, now my conscious thought and logic has access to my emotions. I can understand my emotions logically over just trying to understand them subconsciously, where there is no conscious thought or there is no like language or logic, where meaning is interpreted, so to speak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the process that I sort of created for myself is that when I feel those worst case scenarios or those sort of negative emotions, I lean into them and I amplify them and drag myself as low as I can to the bottom artificially. So, for example, um, like someone I was with cheated on me. So, what happened was like to deal with that, I basically amplified that thing. So that feeling of being worthless, no one's ever gonna love me. I'm gonna be alone forever. I amplified that emotion and those feelings, and then basically kept amplifying them to the point of where I was visualizing out being 80 or 90 years old on my deathbed with no one around me. We're never having known a social connection or an intimate connection. And what that does is when we drag ourselves to the bottom, to the lowest point in life that we can go, what happens is we get a choice. Is this our reality or is this not? So this is the foundation of building yourself up, is we have to first rip down all the false illusions of, feeling, like, oh, like avoiding the emotions. So it's sort of like the more we drag ourselves to the perceived bottom that we have, like the more impactful that like decision is going to be. But once we make a decision to reject that, it now never has power over me because I've emphatically rejected that that is not a reality that I support or that will be a reality. Do you know what I mean? And
That's
from
such a
there,
scary thought, though. That's so
yeah, it
scary.
is.
That's
Yeah,
so, so scary because, oh my God,
yeah.
it's terrifying.
And that's the thing. It's in overcoming that terror that the terror holds no control over you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, excuse me while I have a cig because
Oh,
this
that's all
is
good.
just, mm.
But it's sort of like it's how do we build ourselves up to being able to do that?
Yeah, because that's like I said, like the stuff that
Mm.
I've been through, it's not normal. It's not
Yeah.
normal. It's not based in humanity in any way, shape, or form. It's based in, really intense spirituality and,
Yeah.
um, even just talking about it, every time I've ever spoken about it, always just seems so crazy. But,
Hmm.
it's just to be frank,
Yeah.
I was possessed for pretty much all of my life until I managed to shake the possession.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to believe it was true until it was. And
Yeah.
then I finally was able to break free from being possessed.
And how were you
Um,
able to do that?
I went and did a lot of things. Like I really sought out every possible avenue. I sought out witchcraft. I sought out, various people that could work
Yep.
energetically. I went
Yep.
and saw a priest. I did ayahuasca ceremonies,
Yep.
cacao ceremonies. I did so much. And so what helped me through was, even
Hmm.
though I'm not a religious person, I went and saw a priest. The priest did
Yep.
help me.
Yep.
And then I did the rest through ayahuasca
Yeah.
and managed to break myself free um, in August.
Hmm.
It's like August or September last year. So it's just been, I've had to come to terms with the the quietness,
Yep.
that the demon wasn't there anymore, and I
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
get used to the fact that,
And
and
was it
it, it
and was
was
it
a
negative thoughts
it
or
they
was
were
it
they were
negative
thoughts that
focus?
it the demon like really would try and make me commit suicide all the time.
Yep.
But I knew that that wasn't my thoughts. I knew they were
Hmm.
thoughts that were inside of me, but outside of me at the
Yep.
same time.
Yep.
And so I managed to push through it all, but it cost me so much throughout my life, and it
Yeah.
drew so much negative
Hmm.
behavior towards me, where I was physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally attacked
Yep.
from so many angles that, like I say, I'm 46, and
Hmm.
it took me 46 years to break free of that.
Yeah.
So basically, my whole life was attack,
Yeah.
and then me in this constant war and battle. And
So now
um,
you're
um,
now you're out of fight or flight.
now I'm out of that. I'm trying to figure out how to
So how do you
operate normally
how do
as a
you like
normal
how do you
person.
want to operate?
I just want everything to be easy.
Easy.
I just
Yeah.
want everything to be easy. And I know that seems really, I know we live in a world where nothing really is easy, but nothing in reality.
But it's also like easy as a frame of mind.
mm,
So like
I'm so
for
used to
mm,
everything being complicated
yeah.
that
So
I
it's
don't have
without all
the,
those illusions that you were being shown, you know what I mean? And all that overcomplication to everything. It's sort of like now you got to figure out what is the path you want to walk, from point A to point B along your journey. Do you know what I mean?
I
So
just want to
it's
feel
about
like I'm not
feeling.
I want to, I want to know within me that everything that I've been through is not me,
Yep.
and that my life can begin afresh.
Yeah, it can. Like you have the choice. Like, do you want to carry the past or
I
do you want
really
to
don't. I really don't. I just
then it's
I
simply a
want to learn
decision.
the skills,
Yeah.
um mentally, emotionally, and physically,
Yep.
on how to be normal.
Well, normal is not authentic. So like you want to be authentic and
My normal.
yeah, authentic or your normal is just what you like, what makes you feel good, what you enjoy. So it's about identifying, like you mentioned, you were able to identify thoughts that were yours and thoughts that were not yours that were being put on you that you weren't naturally thinking. So it's about identifying the feelings now. What what naturally makes me feel good about who I am and sort of my life and my day? and what is being implanted on me by others. So, like people saying, like, for example, you need to be into consumerism to feel happy. The more money you have, the happier you are. But the thing is that, like, if you don't enjoy being a part of the consumerism aspect of society, everything will always feel forced. So it's sort of like you mentioned, you're very spiritual. So, like, spirituality would be something that you enjoy and being a part of in life. Do you know what I
Not
mean?
anymore. That's the thing, is like through it all,
Hmm.
I became a master metaphysician.
Yeah.
It was like I had to learn so much
Hmm.
in order to do it, and I helped so many people,
Yeah.
and now I'm looking at the spiritual community and I'm looking at them all like, man, that's just a fucking load of shit.
Yeah.
Like
A
here
lot of it is.
it is,
So,
a lot of it just
mm,
seems to me like bullshit. Like,
yeah, yeah. But that's the
like
difference between religious structures and spirituality. Spirituality is one's connection to God, one's connection to life. You know, like for example, consciousness, right? A lot of us think consciousness is formed in our brain, but leading science have picked up in consciousness that consciousness is a frequency that our brain, in our subconscious mind, we have these things that are called quantum microtubuli. So they are these small, I put them basically like a kaleidoscope. If you remember one of them, they take
yeah,
one image and they refract it into eight. So basically these quantum microtubula do the opposite. They take collective consciousness and they focus it down into singular consciousness through acts of quantum randomness. So through this understanding, I found that to understand life, God, to connect with everything is through randomness. That's how God speaks to us. That's how we understand things. So we might be walking down the street one day and overhear a portion of a conversation and hear three words, and it triggers an informational download into our brain. So it's through understanding this that life and our authentic life within ourselves and our experience of life is about flowing with that randomness within our life. So when I feel called to, for example, be around friends and family, I take the action to be around friends and family. When I feel called to walk a certain direction in life, I just walk that direction. Do you know what I mean? It's that surrender from I need to know every step of every path to the surrender of we're just walking through a forest or a garden. Do you know what I mean?
that's you've articulated something that I've
Hmm.
because I find myself very uninspired and
Yeah.
unmotivated to do anything. Like I used to keep my house clean, now I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I just
It's sort of like your world's crashed down and now it's trying to find out like
and
what
now it's
even
trying to
exists
find
in
out,
the new
and
world.
it always like brings to mind like when you're lost, just sit still and you'll be found.
Yeah.
And so I've just been sitting still for so long.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to get moving, but I know I need to prompt myself somehow to get moving.
Yeah. So it's sort of
Um,
like this. If you were in love with someone, would it be difficult to be around them? Like if you're deeply and
no,
madly in love with them? No. What we want, we naturally move towards. So essentially, when we feel that sense of, I don't know, like what to do in life, it's, I don't know what I want, what I enjoy, what I love. So it's about trying to understand that through the emotion of when I do things, how does it make me feel? Not what do I get out of the things that I do? Do I feel better about my mental space after I've cleaned? Or do I, opposed to having a clean house because it looks tidy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's in altering that perspective shift on the language that we're using when we're doing behaviors to try and reassign new meaning to them. So it goes from being the meaning of cleaning my house is to have a clean and tidy house to the meaning of cleaning my house is it makes me feel better about who I am. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So then we just expand that out to everything. So in career, like it's sort of like what interests me and what makes me feel good and what do I enjoy doing? Do you know what I mean?
What if I don't know?
Like, but you already know, everyone knows. Like you
But what if
already
I
know the
don't?
answers that you seek, but they're hidden behind illusions of self-worth or self-confidence or limitations. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like I wish I could do this, but I don't have the following. I don't have the money. I don't have the finance. I don't have the time. I don't have the knowledge. Do you know what I mean? Like we all know what makes us happy because it's the things that when you start talking to people, naturally you'll start talking about it. Do you know what I mean?
Sort of like,
Like where does your current interest usually fall when you're spending most of your time?
nowhere.
Yeah, but even if you're watching content, do you watch content that's entertainment? Do you watch content that's educational? Like where are your natural behavioral trends going?
That's the thing. Nowhere. That's the thing. Is like
Hmm.
I used to. So like before I resolved this situation,
Hmm.
I had this goal,
Yeah, and
you
what was
know,
it?
and my goal was to overcome the demon and to be free. And I've done
Okay.
that. And now
Yep, yep.
and
Now
now
it's about setting a new one. So think about a goal
yeah,
as goals are just milestones and markers. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if I want to eat a nice meal, the milestones or the goals are cutting up the vegetables, cooking it. Like, they're just milestones towards the end result, but the end result doesn't really matter. If I burn the meal, if I don't burn the meal, like, it's not the end of the world. So, if we put too much focus on the end result, like you said, overcoming the demon, okay, once we've done that, now what? Do you
now
know what
what?
I mean?
Exactly. It's like now what? It's like
So we have to
it's
either set out a new goal that is on a similar trajectory or create a new goal that is in a completely different lane. Do you know what I mean?
and now I just need to figure out what that is.
Yeah, but it's sort of like if you just do, like naturally you'll figure out what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't have to know what it is before you do it. You can figure out what it is in the middle of doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's about letting go to that control of needing to know the direction I'm walking and just starting to walk without because the destination doesn't really matter. It's the journey along the way that matters. So it's not in achieving the goal that we build up our identity of self. It's in the process of achievement. Do you know what I mean? Like you learn so much through the process but all of your validation is set in the end result. So you're not validating all of that work that you did. You know what I mean? So you don't feel good for
Right.
the amount of learning that you did. You don't feel like you know what you know. Do you know what I mean? So it feels like a hollow
Yeah.
victory.
It does feel like a hollow victory
Yeah.
because fuck man, like it does
Yeah.
feel like a hollow victory. Like I did it. I did it on my own and I did it while
Yeah.
people thought I was crazy and I I did it while I was ostracized by my family and
Yeah.
society, and I did it broke, and I
Yep.
did it homeless, and I did it, in enormous abusive situations, and I
Yeah.
did do it. And I am really trying to appreciate
Yeah. And it's in
that I did do
remembering
it.
when those negative feelings come up, it is that whole process that you just said that is the building of self and self-identity. Do you know what I mean? Like it's reminding yourself, I did do this. I did go through this. I did it alone. Do you know what I mean? So like for example, when I was walking across country, the first mountain range that I had to go through, the Dawes Range, was the like hardest thing I had to do physically, but it was also the last hard thing that I had to do. So walking up it took me so much, like it was like maybe 1.5 or 2 kilometers up, and I was walking, pulling like 50 kilos behind me. So, like it was so physically exhausting of an experience that like every other experience after that pales in comparison because I overcome that. So, when I was walking up smaller hills that would have been exhausting to me beforehand, I said, but this is half the size of what I just did. It's nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you've been through and you've built yourself up from the ground up from, like the depths of hell, so to speak. And it's like now you're struggling with the identity of self and the self-belief. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's sort of like it's unlocking that why do I feel like that? So going through and processing those emotions and that experience using the full brain activation, you're able to logically control and assign the meaning you want to have to each of those experiences to now be ones of empowerment. Do you know what I mean?
right.
So, like, because you're not feeling it, it's not that logically it hasn't been like you remember everything, you know everything, but it's the feeling. So the feeling is about activating the right hemisphere while the left hemisphere is controlled. So we can consciously implant new subroutines, new program, language patterns. Do you know what I mean? New memories. We can
Yeah,
consciously focus and amplify the empowerment and positive memories over the negative self-doubt memories. It's sort of like self-doubt is like weeds in your mind. The more you allow self-doubt, like the more it'll grow. But you don't pull weeds out of a garden. Like to get weeds out of a garden, you just over promote the vegetables or the other plants, and you give them a competitive advantage to over and out compete the weeds, and then the weeds can't sustain themselves. Do you know what I mean? So like instead of us
yeah,
trying to never feel self-doubt, every time we feel self-doubt, we just shovel heaps of self-empowerment and self-belief on it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. It's that reprogramming.
Yeah. And it's literally it only takes 5 minutes. It's what I call black voodoo magic. So Psych K is the original process, and that has specific psychology like language used. The process I created is simply just taking that process, but using like language that you want to use. Do you know what I mean? So you're not saying I'm someone worthy of love and respect. You're saying I'm worthy of love and respect because I've done this. Do you know what I mean? I've gotten out of this. And then, like, the other thing is that, for example, the negative. behavioral traits in others that you experience that you don't want to put yourself into those environments again. Like what we're doing is we're just saying that is a like a no. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a non-discussion no. If someone treats me abusively, I'm not going to sit in a relationship with them and justify to myself why I'm in that relationship, why that behavior is acceptable. Because when I just have it as a declaration of no and it's non-discussionable, I don't ever have to think about it again. But if it's always up for discussion, though it's always going to be like in my mind. So I have to hold on to those memories. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the funny thing is what I found was like, because I had a lot of anger issues because of it, my PTSD from my childhood and the violent upbringing. So basically, that just meant I always felt highly agitated and stressed when I was out in public. And the thing was, is that there's a psychological conditioning and a physiological conditioning. So, for example, like when I walk out on the streets, I walk in a position where I have my body positioning in a fighting stance. So, like for example, I don't have my shoulders slouched. I have my shoulders up because it's quicker to strike. Like I have conditioned my body to always be prepared for violence. So when I'm walking, my mind will try to start running those programs as well. So it's sort of like we just got to understand that like I can get rid of those sort of psychological programs of that like I'm worried about other people attacking me and it's sort of like but the body remembers. So being aware
Yeah.
of that and just accepting that like well what I realized is it's not bad to be prepared for violence, but it's sort of like the psychological aspect would be that I'm walking down the street and I'm prepared to jam my finger into someone's eye and push it into their brain because if they're attacking me, only going to be prepared to punch me, whereas I'm just going to go straight and try and kill them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those sort of extreme circumstances, when we give in to them, we're amplifying that experience. Whereas the program I run is that even though I feel that way and my body positioning is that way, it's that like I'm not stressed, I'm just prepared for anything. Like that's part of my identity of who I am is that, you know, like when I'm in public, like I'm a very stern person like prepared for anything. So it's just in changing that language from me being prepared for violence to me just being prepared to respond to anything or having it as a part of positioning. Like I'm just changing the memories associated to it and just taking out those extreme negative ones. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like when even though I'm feeling certain ways, like I can still consciously redirect and change my either behavior or the meaning behind it. So it's sort of like so like for example, with anything that you want to do, so like let's say you wanted to feel worthy of love and respect. So like the process is simple. You just cross the arms and that activates it. So like you can even try it now. Now what happens is both sides of my brain are activated. So this means I have like greater ability and the ability to communicate through emotion. So the tonality in my voice shifts and
Right.
changes to hold more emotion. So you can always know when it's locked in. But basically, I now have access to my emotions. So if I was to describe love, well, love isn't just a descriptive thing. Love is a feeling. It's that feeling when you're with someone. It's that feeling of acceptancy. It's that feeling of, safety, security, stability. Like It's in the understanding. So it allows us to understand more about our emotions. So if I'm feeling emotional, all I have to do is put in my body into the positioning. And then if I want to reprogram it in, it's just simply, I'm someone worthy of love and respect. I'm someone worthy of love and respect. And we say that for about 5 to 8 minutes. Now, the important thing to understand is the subconscious mind is going to try and show you every reason why you're not. But the whole point of the process and the practice is that you're showing yourself and you're showing your subconscious mind that I dictate the language that is used within my mind. So if I choose for different language to be used, it will be used. If you resist me, I will just keep doing it until your resistance is useless. Do you know what I mean? So that's the process is
Yeah,
we're repeating that language, but our subconscious mind is going to want to shoot and run the narrative that's ingrained in our mind. So when you say, I feel I'm someone worthy of love and respect, the narrative's going to say, no, you're not. This is why. So we're
yeah, because that
repeating it.
always creeps in,
Yeah. So the
you
whole
know,
point is we're not trying to get rid of it. We're just going to continue talking until it changes its tune to be in alignment with ours.
right,
Do you know what I mean?
right.
So it's through
Yeah,
conditioning that we're just conditioning in new behaviors or new emotions or new language.
right.
And you know, and what you'll notice is when we do it until we have that emotional shift, it's now done. Like, but it's in every moment that we're in a situation or circumstance after that self-doubt comes in, we have to consciously decide, no, that is not my reality now. Do you know what I mean? So it's like if someone from
Yeah,
the past who was negative tries to connect with us now and sort of, talk to us, it's sort of like, no, I've dealt with that. Like, that's not a part of my life anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like if someone's
yeah,
trying to start their bullshit, but it's sort of like with self-doubt, we entertain that conversation and then they get to spew more and more bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
so that's all we're trying to do is just strengthen the neural network so that it predominantly fires the thoughts that we want to have or the narratives that we want to have. And then basically in every moment or every situation that we're in after it, we want to consciously reinforce that narrative. And what happens is like Pavlov's dog, through conditioning, we are conditioning the association of that language pattern to specific thoughts or feelings. So, for example, um, pain can cause us to feel negative, to feel hurt. Pain can cause us to feel, happy, excited. So I've done this many times across many different emotions and things like that. But essentially, I can be in the worst pain in my life and feel the most positive about that pain. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So, so I can change the association from pain triggering a negative emotional response to pain triggering a positive emotional response. And that alters and shifts my physiology. So basically what happens is when I become stressed, it releases cortisol into my blood. Cortisol in my blood makes me go into fight or flight. My extremities get most of the blood. My like internal organs are sort of put on standby, and my thinking alters and shifts to being one more of reactionary and survival, opposed to one that's creating and sort of deciding or, you know, um, deciphering what needs to be done. So, an important thing to understand is just in state management, okay, when I go into a stress state, that is one of a disempowered state because it lowers my ability to think and reason because I'm not seeing the full picture. I'm just seeing what's potentially a threat? What's potentially a threat? What's potentially a threat? So, for example, you know, if I view my life as being negative, then I'm constantly reinforcing to be in a stress situation or a stress state of being. So I'm in a reactionary state where I just feel like everything's happening to me. Whereas if I'm able to clear that, so things like breathing exercises and things like that can lowering the heart rate can, release different chemicals into the body that clear up cortisol. But essentially, the easiest thing to understand is that the more negative I associate things, so the more I associate things to being negative, those things are going to have stress responses associated to them. So if I see pain as being positive and you walk up and punch me in the face, I don't go into a state of stress or shock. I'm in a state of excitement and anticipation. So that's one of the funny things is anxiety or anxiousness and excitement are both the same physiological experience within the body. The body doesn't know the difference, it's the meaning we put behind it. So what that taught me was that in any emotion or any sensation that I'm having, my body doesn't actually know what it is. It's just making it up if my brain goes along with it. So if I tell myself that the feeling of pain feels good and I condition it over a long duration of constantly associating that feeling or experience of pain to a positive outcome, what happens is when I feel that pain, it triggers that positive experience. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So like that's all we're trying to do is curate through language and through our emotions and the meanings behind our emotions and the memories associated to them. We're just trying to reprogram in positive over negative. Do you know what I mean? So when I think
Yeah.
about, you know, for example, like moving on in love, like it's positive memories, positive meaning, positive emotions that are felt, not all the negative. Like in
Right.
the, you know what I mean? And then it's sort of like, so it's through determining the language that we want repeating in our consciousness. So becoming aware of the language, like how I speak to other people, how I speak to myself, the language that I listen to from other people. So the content that I consume, you know, if I watch TV. So, like, you can see it in, for example, news. News uses predominantly negative language and negative narratives because it's more psychologically engaging and like creates focus because we naturally focus on things that we don't like or don't want more than things that we do want because it's sort of like a fear response. Like if I'm out in the woods, I don't want to be attacked by a snake, so I'm focusing on a snake and not being, not stepping on a snake more than I am focusing on the things that I enjoy about being in nature because it's like that self-preservation response. So all we're trying to do,
Yeah.
yeah,
Self-preservation. That's that's a big one, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the only way our subconscious understands. So our subconscious understands in context to the self and the self-protection. So like for example, if someone breaks up with me, it can be seen as a really negative thing for myself by myself because now I have lack of stability and all of this. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the conscious understanding of the emotion is the loss of the relationship or whatever it may be. So it's sort of an understanding that like our subconscious mind is just thinking in terms of trying to react, where our conscious mind is thinking of in terms of trying to create or determine. So our conscious mind is outward focused and our subconscious mind is inward focused. So to understand this is just to understand our subconscious mind thinks in terms of trying to react faster and faster and faster. And our conscious mind thinks in terms of being able to do more or a larger multitude of things simultaneously, to be able to see more information, to be able. So when we're always sort of, well, it's not so much a bad thing or anything, but it's sort of like when we're always in the reactionary, sort of that self-preservation, we're not looking out at for growth. We're looking out to survive. And that's just through the language and the meaning behind that language. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But yeah,
because my whole life has just been about survival,
yeah.
and
So if I was to ask
I
you, what does thriving mean to you in terms of when you think about thriving in your life, how are you living?
currently,
Yeah.
or
Oh, no, no. Like when you think about like my ideal life or what I dream and aspire to happen, like what does it look like? Is it that you're traveling? Is it that you're, working on things that mean something to you? Are you at service to others? Like,
it it just literally just means feeling safe all the time
so if we expand safe, what is that defined as for you?
in a strange way. Isolation.
Hmm. Limiting
Um,
variables.
yeah, just having a very simple, you know, having my own space.
Yep.
Being in my own home.
Hmm.
Um, Having access to resources whenever I want them.
Yep.
Um, it means, being in a financial position where I can provide for
Hmm.
myself beyond the basic.
Yep.
Um, it means that I feel comfortable
Hmm.
being in public
Yeah.
because I still get a lot of like really bad social anxiety
Yeah.
when I go out into public. Like my body shakes, and like even just going to the supermarket, I don't feel safe just going to the supermarket.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's sort
um,
of like how like and with each of these, we now have started to get direction moving forward. Do you know what I mean? So like you want to feel safe all the time. So it's sort of like, well, what does safe all the time mean? And how do you create that within yourself without having to lock yourself in a castle? Do you know what I mean? So, like you said, being able to be more comfortable and feel safe in social environments. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
So it's sort of like what actions or what can you do to create that within yourself? Is it, I need to have a certain level of self-defense. I need to have a certain level of, you know, like understanding or situational awareness to feel safe. Like, for example, when I walk down the street, I usually have about 500 meters around me where I'm observant of everyone that's moving because that makes me feel safe. Because at 500 meters, if they come towards me, I can easily run away. I can move away.
that's like when I'm
Hmm.
okay. So just like when I was in that space
Hmm.
where there was that demon,
Hmm.
um, it's sort of like how you were talking about how you used to walk down the street and people would just randomly attack you.
Hmm.
That's how life was 24/7. Like the
Yeah.
second I left the house, it's like this thing would stir shit up around me so that
Yeah.
random acts of violence would happen towards me. And my brain still and my body still hasn't adjusted to the fact that
That
that's not
that's
happening anymore.
yeah, and that's
And
PTSD. Because
yeah, I know.
PTSD is when so it can be formed in two different ways, or it can be formed multiple ways, but two main ways is one is it can be small but highly drastic or extreme acts of violence or emotion. Because PTSD is just being in a heightened state of emotional stress and sort of like for you, it was people attacking you. So you constantly have to be on threat analysis of other people's behavior. So it's sort of like your baseline for how life operates was at a baseline of I have to always be watching everyone because random people are going to come up and attack me the second I'm not watching them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So,
it would be like random things like I'd be standing at a train and somebody would try and push me in front of it. Or um, I would just, somebody would come up and just pick a fight with me. Or,
mhm,
you know, physical acts of violence or abuse from just random men on the street or women. Like it wasn't
yeah,
just one thing or another, it was always, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And I still, when I walk down the street or I go to the supermarket or I'm at work, I just feel like somebody is going to fucking try and throw a punch or somebody is
yeah,
going to try and kill me or and it wasn't just the human aspect, you know, there was the metaphysical aspect
mhm,
of it where um you know, I would feel literally my feet be pulled out from under me to land on a sharp object, or
yeah,
I would feel something push me down the stairs.
mhm,
And, and so it just got to a point where it wasn't just people, but it was the metaphysical.
yeah.
And, and, and now that I know that that's not happening, it's like I know it's not happening.
But
I
your body
still
is conditioned to it happening.
mm, for 46 years, man. I mean,
Mm.
it's a long fucking time. It's my whole
Yeah,
life,
yeah. So it's sort of
And
like think
so,
about trying to breathe underwater. We haven't done it
yeah,
much, so it's very difficult to do. So like to take that analogy, you're underwater and you're trying to breathe like there's air around. So like you're so used to being in that level of stress that the brain isn't like distinguishing between you're in that thread and you're out of that thread. So it's through the behavior, the conditioned behavior of the experience. So the way I
sorry,
overcome
I'm
this
shaking.
was was with yeah. So it's sort of like to overcome this, one of the easy ways is like, for example, like how do you make yourself feel safe physically? How do you make yourself feel safe metaphysically? So I've had people try and metaphysically attack me. And the thing is that like when they try, they're coming up against someone who has spent thousands and thousands of hours honing my mind, my body, and my soul, or my spirit, or my consciousness together. So it's sort of like it's about doing the reps. Do you know what I mean? If my mindset's locked down, like if someone tries to manipulate me, like they haven't got a chance. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like if my body is toned because of exercise, like I'm always in a position of being conditioned for exertion. So it's sort of like, how do I have to condition my mind and my soul and my spirit to feel that level of security within myself that should something or someone try and attack me? Like, for example, a key thing to understand is that we are all God. We are God because we are consciousness. Consciousness is God, therefore we are God. So like the thing is like, as I say to people, I get a lot of people who tell me that that's blasphemy. I say to God, right? So I say to God, like, if that is blasphemy, strike me down, but know if you come against me, you are not coming against your servant, you are coming against your equal, for I am you. Do you sort of understand? Like, no matter what anyone else can do to me, I have called out the highest power in the universe and said, if you come for me, prepare for an equal fight because I'm going to show you the devil. Do you know what I
And
mean?
yeah, because that is, what I used to overcome the demon
Yeah,
was like, you can't, no matter what you do, you're never going to beat me
yeah,
because I am God. And that's exactly like what I used to,
yeah.
like in my darkest days, and when it
So
would
it's
try
sort
and
of
get me to
like,
like pick up a
yeah,
knife and attack myself, I'd be like, man, you're not going to win this battle because you don't have the power that I have,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
So it's in when you're in that environment and that sort of emotion starts going that I feel like I could be attacked by anything at any time. It's remembering that and then repeating that to yourself and sort of repeating it to um other things like for example, like the way I like to put it is the mindset is sort of like this. If I throw you to the wolves, are you going to be prey to those wolves? Like if you throw me to those wolves, the first wolf that comes up to me, I'm going to dislocate its jaw and then snap its neck. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. Like I'm going to sacrifice my body and I'm going to fight until the last ounce of strength I have. I'm not going to fight to look good. I'm not going to fight to feel good about myself. Like I'm going to fight until there is absolutely nothing left in me. Do you know what I mean? It's that mindset that like you and there's a reason I created this mindset. And the reason is most guys in a fight, so I had a lot of physical, fighting was really big and all of that. But most guys in a fight may be prepared to break their nose, but are they prepared to have their arm broken and continue fighting? Like in combat and warfare, like it's am I willing to be shot and then continue operating that sort of increases your survivability. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
what level of damage or what level of violence am I willing to go through and still think that the sun is shining? Do you know what I mean? Like how much can I take? How much can I endure? So it's sort of like, do you know what I mean? Do I
Yeah.
get thrown to the wolves and see it as I am one person and outnumbered? Or do I get thrown to the wolves and see that I am alone, but the wolves are outnumbered? Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's in that mindset shift that we lose the fear because we're no longer worried about the environmental stimuli because I am a part of that environment. Like I alter and change. Sort of like how you said with the demon, like you altered and changed the power dynamic in the environment because you said, I am the director, the difference maker. Like I create the environment. So you can try, but I'm just going to alter and shape the environment. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like a lucid dream. If you've ever experienced a lucid dream where you
Yeah.
realize that you're dreaming. So like I've always had the ability to, and the mind has always been an element that I've always lived in. But I've always been able to control my dreams. So if I realize that I'm in a dream that I don't like, I just change the circumstances of that dream to have a dream that I do like. If I wake up in the middle of a nightmare, I alter the circumstances of that nightmare to make it into whatever dream I want it to be. Like I'm not victim to my mind. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like
Right.
you could never have overcome the demon being a victim to the mind or the circumstances. So, like, to reprogram out the PTSD is just determining, like, and altering that sort of victim mindset that everything in the environment is going to attack me to if everything in the environment attacks me, like, I feel sorry for it. Do you know what I mean? Because then I don't have to walk around worried about if someone's going to attack me. Like if someone attacks me, like for example, I can take a punch, and I've found in life that being punched in the face doesn't hurt. People think it hurts, but in the moment that I get punched in the face, my body goes into shock. I get an adrenaline dump and I cease to feel pain. And then my anger takes over. Like there's no point of that that's fearful because, as soon as they punch me, I'm going to become highly aggressive and angry and then stop feeling pain and stop registering pain. Do you know what I mean? So I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about someone sneaking up and punching me in the face because I know the thing's going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have situational awareness. So in my understanding of safety and developing my own personal safety, what you notice in the trend is that it's not average people that attack you, it's predatory people. People that are looking for someone weaker than them to prey on, people that are looking for someone who's not going to fight back. Do you know what I mean? So predators have specific behavioral tendencies. A predator does not respond to a higher amount of aggression. If someone walks up and threatens to punch you in the face, tell them you'll eat their face. And they won't understand what to say because they've come in with this level of aggression and threat and violence, and you've come in way over them. So, like, they're sort of in shock because that's not the expected activity or the expected behavior. But the other thing is predators look and prey upon people they perceive to be weak. So it's in the body language, it's in the body holding and the body positioning. For example, when I'm out in public, like I hold a specific fighting stance in terms of I hold my shoulders up, I don't pop my chest out, but I tense my chest to indicate to other people that like I don't mind fighting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I'm not
I do
walking
the exact same
slouch.
thing.
Yeah.
I do the exact same thing, and people now keep a wide a
Yeah.
wide girth from me. People don't want to come near me,
Yeah.
which I'm kind of good with because it just is like, okay, I just,
Yeah. So it's sort
stay
of
the fuck
like,
away.
yeah, so you sort of understand now that our body language in the situation and our awareness of the situation determines our safety in the situation to an extent. So like for example, like if you're walking down the street and you're holding body language and you got situational awareness on and there's three guys coming towards you and they're drunk or they're high or whatever and they got aggressive or antisocial behavior, like yeah, you can keep walking towards them, but the likelihood of violence because of the situational awareness indicates that it's not the best course of action unless violence is what you want. So you move around them. So understanding that is that we choose the environments we want to be in. So like for example, if it's late at night and I'm walking in that same circumstance, I would move to the other side of the road. Not because I'm scared or intimidated by the other people, but I want them to have to cross the road directly and indicate to me that they want to attack me. I'm not waiting for them to have the opportunity to attack me. So like violence and all of that is based on availability and opportunity. If I'm 6 feet away from you, it's easier for you to attack me than if I'm 30 meters away from you. So like that distance and all of that is important to minimizing and lowering the attack, but it also makes them have to indicate their behavior to you and broadcast their behavior to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like using these steps, we can construct and make ourselves safe, but then it's overcoming the emotional attachment to that feeling of unsafe. So like, when I feel unsafe, I become more observant of the situation around me. Do you know what I mean? I could be feeling unsafe because I'm like, for example, what's his name? Oh, I can never remember it, but Joe Dispenza. They did a study where they basically had it's like an MRI machine, but it has a transceiver on it or a transmitter or whatever. But basically, they were able to pick up and read the thought patterns and the brain waves outside of the brain. Do you know what I mean? So we all give off energy in terms of we give off electromagnetic energy and we give off our
Yeah.
thoughts and the different vibrations. So you don't want to you don't want to so to speak, like dismiss those feelings as being that it's, PTSD or it's trauma. Like it could be the environment. Do you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
could be
I've
feeling negative
really,
things happening in the environment.
I'm really, part of, everything that I've been through, I've tried to always utilize um, what's happened to me for a better situation. So, like, for
Hmm.
example, because I was so used to this internal battle,
Yeah.
um, I became a security officer.
Hmm.
I used to live in the States up until 2023. I moved home.
Yeah.
I became a security, having to always be aware
Hmm.
of my environment because of
Yeah.
the spiritual attack to carrying a gun at work
Hmm.
and protecting people.
Yeah.
So I used my heightened sense of awareness
Hmm.
to try and benefit others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's now I'm just at this stage where it's like, okay, I feel like I've done enough for everybody else for a
Hmm.
while. And now I really I want to get my life into gear and I want to get everything um, working in my favor,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I don't think I'll ever lose my situational awareness.
No.
I don't think I'll ever lose that because that's just now part of who I am.
Yeah.
Um, but now, um, and, and and it took me a while for me to accept this with me. Is just that I want to be a gentle woman
Hmm.
rather than being this hard ass all the time. I
Yeah.
want to be able to
Lower the
embrace.
guard.
Yeah, I want to lower the guard, embrace my femininity. I want to be gentle. I want to. I just want to feel like a woman
Hmm.
without feeling like a militant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm never going to lose my situational awareness, and I think also that's part of being a woman is you can't always let your guard down.
No.
You have to be aware of your environment and stuff like that. And I've learned a lot about, um, you know, how do you observe
Hmm.
and judge a situation for your safety. So,
Yeah.
because of the metaphysical as well as the physical, I've had to learn a lot of ways of it's like I used to practice kung fu
Hmm.
when I was in my early 20s. And one of the things that my teacher taught me was the best way to win a fight is to not be there,
Yeah.
because you'll always get to live another day. Saying that, my kung fu teacher tried to rape me, so I had to leave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's like I still learnt the lesson along the way.
Yeah.
And so just like coming back around, I want to, I just want to believe in myself.
Hmm.
I know what I've achieved.
Yep.
You know, I
And
want
now
to
it's
believe.
transferring that to feeling it.
Yeah, I want to believe, and I want to feel that I deserve a good life,
Hmm.
and that I want to believe and feel that the war is over, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know intellectually, I know that it's over,
Hmm.
but it's like I've denied the fact that I'm in PTSD. Like, oh, you're too
Yeah.
tough to go through that. Don't even, you know,
Hmm.
stop weakening yourself,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and I know that by
So
doing that, I'm
it's sort of
denying
like
myself the
this.
opportunity to come out of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a funny thing what I realized because I used to be a lot of it that way. And it's like when I push things away, like I used to repress my emotions. And it's sort of like when I repress my emotions or I tell myself like I don't have this, I don't have that. It's sort of like I'm walking, I'm coming back from battle and I've got an arrow sticking out of my leg. And I'm saying there's nothing in my
Oh, there's
leg.
no arrow there.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
So
Just
like I can lie to myself all I want, but it's sort of like for me it was that I was always angry. So I always had that anger underneath me. And in the moment that I decided to stop lying to myself, I overcame it because I simply said, like, I'm a highly aggressive person and I don't know how to overcome that. And in the moment of accepting that, what happens is that like I don't have to. I take the pressure off me having to, and my subconscious can deal with it. Do you know what I mean? Like when I
yeah,
go of control to the needing to sort of have that validation of completing something, like it can be done. So it's sort of in this understanding that like as soon as I admit to myself that I have a problem, but I don't know how to overcome it, I set my subconscious mind in process of figuring out how to overcome it. And what happened was for me is that the next day I was slightly happier and slightly happier and slightly happier until the point where all of a sudden anger wasn't my problem anymore. Like nothing had changed in what I had done. I just accepted that this is a part of me and it's not the worst, but I don't want to be an angry person. So I just decided to stop being an angry person. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's in the process of admitting to ourselves that we have a problem, that we're able to deal with the problem, because like if we're telling ourselves that we don't have a problem, we don't have a problem, we don't have a problem, or that I know how to figure it out, I know how to figure it out, we don't actually give ourselves the time or the
the
ability to deal with it.
opportunity.
Yeah. And then when we get into Tao and Zen, so there is no future and there is no past. So there's only ever the present because I only ever experience the present. Tomorrow I will experience as the present. Yesterday I experienced as the present. So there's only today and right now, and that goes on forever. So it's sort of like in any moment in time, I can have everything that I want. I don't need to set out that it's going to take me X amount of time. So what I found is that I was trying to learn and learn everything about personal development and overcoming personal insecurities and all of that. And the thing was, as soon as I identified what I wanted to know or what I didn't know, I already knew it. So to understand this is just to understand that, like, I don't need to understand or know logically or medically how I breathe. I can just breathe. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to know
Yeah.
logically how to have self-worth. I can just have self-worth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Just like through this discussion, I really see how
Yeah.
I can understand that I'm blocking myself.
Yeah.
And I can see
But that's the war with everyone.
how I'm blocking myself.
Yeah. Like everyone has this exact same thing. Like my war was the internal war against myself, against all the past decisions and insecurities and the baggage and all of that and all the restrictions I put on myself. So like in understanding if I want a sandwich, I can always sit there and think and say, I have to go and do this, I have to go and do that. But like if I want a sandwich, I can just go and get a sandwich.
So, yeah.
Like I don't have to put blockers in it. So it's sort of like saying like I want to be happy, but then I have to do all these different things before I'm allowed to be happy. It's sort of like I'm allowed to feel happy even so the way I put this is like if you drag me into hell, okay, and you take me to hell, like I get to choose to see greenery, to see shrubbery. It can be fire and brimstone and all of that, but I don't have to see it as that. So it's
It's
sort of
just,
like,
can I just
mm,
like, I know what you're saying because, okay, and so this
mhm,
is this is where things get a bit muddled for me,
yeah,
is that when I was in hell, a flower meant so much,
yeah,
a bird, just all of that, it meant so much. And the when I was when I was after I let it all, well, after I overcame,
hmm.
a flower doesn't mean shit to me anymore.
But
I think
why?
that's,
Do you know what I mean? Like you
yeah,
assigned,
maybe because I think because I don't need it to remind me that there's something else besides hell.
yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like when you're in hell, you found these small things to hold on to and you created this meaning of it. And now that you're out of it, it's sort of like,
It doesn't
what
mean
now?
anything anymore.
But that's just all like focus. So you can make it mean that still. Like it can still mean that. Do you know what I mean? It's just that now you don't need it to mean that.
Well,
Do you know what I
that's what you
mean?
were talking about before, about
Yeah.
changing the
The
narrative
mean.
around it.
Yeah. So it's sort of like it was a tool that you used to gain strength out of, but now like it it
Now I can just
doesn't.
appreciate its beauty without needing it to mean
But you can use
something
it to
to
build
me.
strength. So, like, for example, like when you talk about meaning of life, right? Many people think like family is my meaning of life and all of this. What I
It's joy.
realized was, well, what I realized was that meaning, okay, is whatever we want it to be. We all determine meaning. There is no meaning in the external environment. If a tree falls over and dies, like the forest doesn't cry for it. Like it's just something has happened. If I walk outside and get hit by a bus, nothing has really happened. I've just been hit by a bus and killed. Like there's no overarching meaning to the birds are going to sing a sadder song today or anything like that. So like there is no good or bad. There is what I determine for myself as being good and what I determine for myself as being bad. So, like, meaning to life, a lot of people put in material things, or they put it in if I'm healthy, that's my meaning to life. If I lose my health, I have now lost everything that means something to me in life. If my meaning to life is my family, I have now lost everything if I lose that family. So it's sort of like what I found was my meaning to life is the sunlight, feeling the sunlight on my skin, listening to the birds, feeling the wind, feeling the water, like seeing the stars, being a part of the universe. Why? If there's no sunlight, no stress. I'm gonna die anyway. If there's no air, I can't breathe. If there's no water, I can't sustain myself. If there's no animals, if there's no universe. So it's like if my meaning of life goes away, it's sort of like the universe has gone with it because my meaning
Yeah.
is the base of the universe. But the other thing is if I want to feel meaning in life, all I have to do is go out there and put my hand in the sun, and now I am taking action that is the meaning of life to me. Do you know what I mean? So we make the meaning as small as possible so that when I feel the wind, like it's the meaning of life to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we build ourselves up. But it's sort of like I get to determine whatever it is, and then by focusing on that meaning and that meaning something to me, I created the belief that it means more to me than it does. So, like, because the flower was all you had, it became everything. So, all the meaning went there. Do you know what I mean? So, it's sort of like we can recreate that and put all our meaning to flowers and all of that, and sort of like it's sort of like if, like, for example, the first time I told myself that this sunlight touching my skin didn't mean anything, or that it was the meaning to life to me, like it didn't mean anything. I put my hand in the sunlight, my hand was in the sunlight. But I sat there and told myself that feeling is life. And I told myself that again and again and again and again. And after a while, that narrative becomes true. So, like, whatever you want to have meaning and however much you want it to mean something to you, you just got to keep telling yourself until it becomes that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's all it
Um,
is that it's sort of like you've lost an idol and now you're trying to find another idol, but it's sort of like you can just create anything into an idol. So it's sort of like, if I wanted to create an altar, I could go there and I could, listen to the church, and an altar has to be this and that and all of this. Or I could just go and get some rocks and some flowers and put it on a table and say, this is the altar of my most spiritual place. And the more I re-ingrain that belief, the more that belief starts to mean something to me. But the other aspect of it is the habit aspect. So the more like, for example, I talk to trees. So every time I see a tree, I'll talk to it. So it's like at first I'm talking to a tree. But now when I do it, like it's such a habit that when I walk past trees and I don't talk to them, like it feels weird because I'm so used to doing like so we're trying to make it feel comfortable. So like that's the other thing is the flower used to be like, your source of comfort. Do you know what I mean? But it was comfortable because it was a habit as well. So now everything else feels uncomfortable because you got to create that new habit of doing the same thing every day. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And all it is just picking what you want it to be. So, like for example, when I felt lonely, I would just talk to trees. Do you know what I mean? And the funny thing is that like trees are a form of consciousness just like we are. But the thing is that like we are the same form of consciousness as them. The consciousness that creates them is the same consciousness that creates us. Like
Mm.
we are them. When I talk to a tree, I'm talking to myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like when I'm having a conversation with the tree and I'm not trying to direct that conversation, I'm just letting it flow in random, that tree can talk back to me through my own words, through where my attention and focus flows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that's how I make my comfort. And then every time I talk to trees now, I'm happy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like we're just creating and ingraining that behavior to the point where, it's sort of like if I eat my favorite food every day, like I'm gonna like it more and more and more and more. And it's sort of like the more I eat it, well, the more used to it I am. So anything other than that feels a bit off, feels a bit, different. So we're just creating that level. And it's sort of like if we can create it in the smallest things, like it's sort of like, so like one thing I did was like, um, as a form of meditation, like I will sit outside and be as still as possible and sort of let the flies walk all over me and observe the sensations on the skin from such a small creature. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's through that process I'm connecting with the life around me. So if I want to feel more connected to like life or my life or anything like that, like I just create processes or practices that help connect me back to what I'm trying to be a part of. Do you know what I mean? So like if I want to have
Yeah.
more nature in my life, I connect more with nature. If like for example, it's like we can take that same thing to like doing it in the context of safety. Do you know what I mean? Like I go to an environment and I sit there and I just observe my sensations and realize I'm safe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I need to stop running away.
Yeah.
I need to stop running away because I won't I won't make a breakthrough unless I actually step into the space of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's just about like just being there. It's sort of like when
Yeah.
I was walking across country, there were there were five or six major storms or cyclones that I had to walk through. And it's like the first ones, like I sat there and I would be like, oh, I hope it doesn't rain. I hope it doesn't rain. I hope it doesn't rain. Like, I don't want to walk 20 or 30 Ks dripping wet, soaked. I don't want all my shit to get soaked. By the end of it, like, what I realized is, like, the rain's going to fall regardless. So, like, the emotions are going to feel the way that they feel regardless. Do you know what I mean? Like waiting 1 year, waiting 2 years, getting more information ain't gonna make them feel easier. It's sort of like they're gonna feel what they feel. So I can spend my time trying to avoid it and trying to go around it, or I can just walk through it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like what I found was that like at a certain point in time, like naturally my body heat dries my clothes. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not that
Yeah.
big of a like that idea of walking in soaking wet clothes and soaking wet shoes and stuff like that. Like we make it out to be worse than it is, but at a certain point, like it just stops bothering you. So it's sort of like dealing with emotions and dealing with what causes anxiety and fear is sort of like if I just sit in it for long enough, at a certain point in time, I'll be comfortable in it. And then I can start working. Like I don't have to try and tame the beast. Like if I just sit next to a lion at a certain point in time, I'll feel comfortable next to the lion. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to be
Yeah.
comfortable on the first step. And it's sort of the process of guiding yourself through that that really is what builds that self-belief and self-worth. Do you know what I mean? Because it's
Mm,
sort of like you don't have someone there sort of walking you through it. You have to walk yourself through it.
yeah.
And it's that's where we build that self-confidence. Because self-confidence is based out of self-certainty. Certainty that, in this situation I can get through it. That's self-confidence. Self-worth is based out of self-value. So like, you know, I am valuable who I am. What I do is valuable. What I think and feel is valuable. The more I value who I am and what I think and feel, the more worth I have for myself. Do you know what I mean?
What did you say? Self-confidence
Is
is what?
self-certainty. So,
Self-certainty.
yeah, so just certainty of outcome. So, for example, self-confidence might be that, like in a dating situation, I don't feel self-confident. I don't feel certain that it's going to go the way that I want it to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then self-belief is literally just programmed thoughts. So like when I have self-doubt, I just choose to reassociate it to self-belief. So I think I'm not good enough. And then it's like, yes, I am. Do you know what I mean? Like I am good enough. And that's all we do is we reassociate from my subconscious or my mind saying you're not good enough to me overriding that every time and just saying I am good enough. And then I am good enough becomes the more dominant like narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But it's sort of like I do these every day as well, Monday to Friday. And it's sort of just like it's just about working through and just facing it and dealing with it and then realizing that
yeah.
it's not as bad as you thought it would be.
Yeah, because like I woke up this morning and
Hmm.
you know, I had a conversation with a friend of mine
Hmm.
last week or the week before or something, and they prompted the question within me is like, have I had enough pain in my life?
Yeah.
And um, I'm like, well, have I? You know, have I
Mm.
had enough pain? And I think yes, I have had enough pain.
Hmm.
Um, but then I woke up this morning and my question to myself was, why don't you think that you deserve to live a life free of pain? And why do you feel like you're not worthy of having what you want or being
Hmm.
happy,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
and that's how I then found you because
Yeah.
I asked myself these questions. I'm like, well, I fucking have to find an answer to this shit. Let me find something,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of people they recommend, going to a psychologist or something like that. And I'm like, those people are fucking idiots.
Yep. Because I never
Um,
experienced it.
because they don't know shit, and
Yeah.
I've also, you know, I've tried psychology, I've tried
Hmm.
psychotherapy, and those people, they're just regurgitating what they read in a textbook. They don't know
Yeah.
shit about shit. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then I've tried like lots of, try
Personal
spiritual
development.
people,
Mm.
and those people again, they're just regurgitating what somebody else said to them, but they don't have anything in life. And I said to my sister after I came out of,
Mm.
after I beat the demon and everything, I said, look, I need to find people who have survived
Yeah.
because they're the ones that know how to get out of this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody who hasn't survived hell
Mm.
can't tell you how to get out of hell.
No.
Need to find people that not necessarily went through the same thing as me because goodness knows I've never met anybody in my life that has ever suffered a demonic possession.
Yeah.
As crazy as it is, I'm like, I don't know anybody that's ever fucking been possessed by a demon for their entire life and then beat the demon. Like, I don't know anybody like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are people that have gone through their own personal hells,
Exactly.
and those are the people that I'm trying to seek out,
Yeah,
because those
yeah.
are the people that
Have walked the path.
they've walked it in one way or another.
Yeah.
And, not to say that we're all coming out squeaky clean, shiny.
Oh no.
We're going to have our chips and we're going to carry them for the rest of our lives. And we're going to have our bits that are put together with super glue. We're going to have them for the
Mm.
rest of our lives. But we do need a way to be able to walk in this world and not let our cracks and our chips be the only thing that we are,
Yeah, exactly,
And
exactly.
so I think like the major thing with me now after this conversation is I need to accept the fact that that's what I've been through, because
Yeah. No.
I don't think I have accepted the fact that for my entire life up until only a few months ago, um, every day hasn't been a choice to live or to die,
Yeah.
And so a lot of food for thought for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
A
definitely.
lot of food for thought.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And it's just replaying and amplifying the journey, you know? All those times you could have faltered, but you didn't. All those times you found strength where you didn't know there was strength.
all the times I overcame when I thought I could, I was about to give in, and I never did.
Yeah. Yeah,
I never
exactly.
did,
Like
you know?
they're the biggest points of strength and confidence building. Do you know what I mean? Because in any decision moving forward, it's sort of like if the feeling to give in goes in, it's sort of like, but I didn't give in back here when it was 10 times worse. Do you know what I mean?
Billion times, yeah. Because it's the weirdest things, like when you have, and something that I just realized
Hmm.
recently was that I miss the demon.
Yeah.
It was my internal companion my whole life.
Yeah.
And I've sort of come to realize that I'm internally now creating
The
the
identity.
the like the voice, the
Hmm.
things that he used to say, or I say he because it always sounded like a man.
Yeah.
The things that he used to say to me, I'm now saying to myself,
Yeah.
to a much lesser degree,
Yeah.
but I'm still saying them to myself because that was the narrative for
Hmm.
46 years. That was the
Yeah.
narrative of who, of my value.
Yep.
Does that
And
make sense?
yeah, it's the
And
conditioned
so,
narrative. So
yeah,
that
so it
synaptic
totally was
pathway is
conditioned.
so much stronger than any others. So like the battle is overcoming it
Yeah,
through the just the psyche practice or the full brain activation, just doing that
yeah,
and then just fighting it because it's sort of like now it's about showing your mind. So you've killed the demon, so to speak. You've taken
literally.
over. So you've taken over the throne, and now it's like, are you going to be a benevolent leader that empowers the subject, which is you, or are you going to be a dictatorial like the demon? Do you know what I mean? And put
Yeah.
yourself down. So you're in full control of everything. Um, this has been really good. I'll be on here tomorrow as well. I just gotta jump off now.
Yeah.
But no, it's been awesome chatting, and I'll
What's your
upload
name?
this one, Justin,
Justin.
and I'll
Thanks.
upload this to my channel and all that, so you'll be able to see it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.